From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex episode of the day. And on today's podcast, we have the co-founder of EmberTribe, Josh Sturgeon. EmberTribe is a digital marketing agency focused on customer acquisition, I believe founded in 2015. Josh, how you doing?
Doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. Cool story. I hunted you down on LinkedIn and thought to myself, oh, he'd be a great guest to have on the podcast. And tell us your journey and how you went from having a regular job to starting a business and all of that. So why don't you start off with, telling the listeners about your personal story, family, where you grew up, things like that.
Yeah, sure. No, I'd love to. So I grew up in the greater Boston area, just about 20 minutes west of Boston. I somehow managed to escape without a terrible accent.
I don't hear it.
I grew up in an area with a lot of transplants.
Okay.
But if we have a couple drinks, you might detect a little bit here and there. And so I grew up in the Northeast and pretty much have lived here my whole life. I moved around a little bit, but settled now on the North Shore of Boston, and I'm a New Englander through and through.
Okay.
I'm a family guy, so I've got two kids, ages 7 and 4, at least at the time of this podcast. And
Awesome.
My family's everything. It's really been a big reason why we built kind of our company the way that we built it, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But kind of New England kid, grew up in greater Boston. Grew up thinking originally that I was going to go really deep into music. And
Oh, really? Okay. I was looking at your undergrad, and I was thinking, okay, now what was his plan there? Yeah. Talk to us about that. You went to Gordon College. Did you major in music? I thought you majored in business.
I did major in business. So I was going between being a music major and then doing something else, and ended up doing something else, but pursuing music pretty heavily on the side.
Like you played in a band?
Yeah. So I did the singer-songwriter thing for a bit. I actually did
Really?
session work for a bit. And then one of my earliest gigs, because I graduated into the heart of the recession, one of my earliest gigs was actually running a music studio. So I had about 20, 25 students. Yeah, I rented out space in a school. So I was heavy into music for a while, and it really definitely laid the groundwork for kind of my entrepreneurial journey in a big way.
Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth. So that was the early entrepreneurial stuff right there, your own music studio.
That was it. Yeah. And even before that, we're talking early 2000s. We're talking like the era of MySpace, pre-Facebook. YouTube was maybe year one.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of exploring some of those channels to try to connect with people who are interested in music and in our music. So yeah, it was kind of the Wild West of social media back then.
Wow. Okay. Now, but you were going to school for business. You had this little side gig going on. Plus you played in a band and all this stuff. You're writing music. Okay. Can you sing now? Go ahead and do something no, I'm just joking.
Where the royalties at?
Right. Where'd you get the entrepreneurial bug? Did that come from one of your parents, or where did that come from?
Yeah, it's funny. So I think I've been around it my whole life in some capacity. So my dad worked in corporate, but first he worked for the government for a long time in the FDA, then worked over in the biotech sphere. So real science-based guy. And then, not so entrepreneurial, much more kind of corporate, and really respect him, really respect, the path that he took. Very consistent type of guy, really just grinded it out. And my mom, though, always found ways to kind of make extra money. So that was at some points, running a massage therapy practice and kind of holistic health business, all the way to,
All right.
other types of freelance things. So I probably got a little bit of it there. But I think as a kid, I just wanted to build things, and I wanted to be able to make my own money.
Okay. All right. I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For trying to solve that problem. So, yeah.
So then you finished your undergrad, and then what's this? So you got your master's in religious studies. So tell me what the plan was right there. I'm super curious. As I studied for the podcast, I'm like, all right, what was going on?
Who is this guy? Yeah. I wish I had a better answer for you, man. I think at the time I was just really interested in pursuing that at a higher level. So I did end up with a theology degree. So I learned Greek, I learned Hebrew. There's a time where learning Greek and Hebrew in the morning and raking somebody's lawn in the afternoon, and then learning how to build a website, in the evening. It was a real mixed bag of,
and still playing music.
It's still playing music on some level. At that point, it started dying down a little bit more. But
all right.
So the graduate work that I did was really just pursuing a personal interest.
Okay.
I didn't have any sort of career ambitions necessarily around that, but it was something that I started out doing and completed over a long period of time, part-time while I worked.
Okay. So as you were going to grad school, you started messing around with marketing and websites and stuff like that too on the side. So now you're pivoting in a whole nother. You're over here with the religious studies. That you got the music. You majored in business for your undergrad, but now you're going to be a marketing guy.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. A lot of the variability that you're seeing is like what I mentioned before. Is I graduated in 2007, right into the heart of the recession. I remember applying to job after job after job and just being met with a brick wall. Yep. It was the chicken or the egg. This one requires experience. Well, how do I get experience? It's like this endless loop. And it's funny because actually I got the honor from my undergrad this last year. I won an award for entrepreneurship, and the person that gave it out was saying, it's interesting when we look at people who graduated around the years that you graduated. A high percentage of them ended up starting their own business or taking a different path.
Wow.
And,
okay.
The assumption there was, hey, there's something to do with there being a lack of opportunity around that time and having to create your own path.
How about that?
So my answer was pretty simple, man. As I was freshly married, a year or two out of college, in the heart of a recession, needed to pay the bills. Yep. Tried to translate something I was interested in and passionate about with music to translate that into income. Supplemented it with hard work and landscaping. And then through a dying phone book company doing door-to-door sales, I learned about digital marketing. And that's really what kicked off kind of the next chapter of my career.
Wow. Now, did you start off in the marketing department for the phone book company, or you actually started off knocking on doors?
I was literally knocking on doors. Yeah, going door to door. And it was, like I said, a dying phone book company that's long since passed. And they knew that their ticket to survive was going to be translating from the old school phone book directional advertising to this digital world.
Okay.
And so as I'm selling this, I'm just getting increasingly curious and interested in how all of this works. How could you rank for buy brown shoes online, and you're a brown shoes guy? That's just incredibly powerful, right? So learning about SEO, learning about all the ways that you can grow a business online was really interesting to me.
Are you studying this all this on your own, or somebody there at the company's teaching you?
So I made friends with the one guy who was responsible for delivery because I needed to try to understand what I was selling.
Okay.
And he turned me on to resources and blogs I could learn from. And that's the thing is, especially in the early 2000s, like there's no curriculum, there's no degree, there's nothing teaching you how to do this. So you're going to communities. At the time it was SEO Moz, now Moz, Search Engine Land. There's all these kind of old school publishers and communities where you would go and learn. But then where you'd really learn is putting it into practice and just seeing what worked. And so, I started balancing Greek and Hebrew with learning how to code and learning, the technical on-page and off-page aspects to things like SEO. And that was the doorway.
Wow. Wow. Okay. All right. And then, so from there, did you work somewhere else for a little bit, Ziff Davis or something like that before you started freelancing? Yeah. Talk to me. Yeah.
So basically I had a string of other small short sprints, some of them contract. Basically I worked for a larger agency at one point, which was really, really great experience.
Okay.
And it got me exposed to like Fortune 500 brands, some larger companies doing things on a larger scale. But really where I started to really flourish and take off is I started a business with my wife that we eventually sold. And it was a language services company.
And Citygate Language Services.
Citygate Language Services. Yeah. It started out just as basically an interpreting agency. So if somebody had a need, like for instance, a legal team was going to conduct a deposition, they needed to have an interpreter present to make sure that the record was clear and that who they're deposing was communicating clearly, or in medical uses. So we eventually built that to about 50 contractors. We serviced about 150 languages, all kind of in the greater Boston area, and then moved into like things like document translation and things that were more scalable online.
Okay, now hold on. I want to dig into here just for a minute. Let's back up just a tad. You're working at the marketing agency as an employee, right?
Right.
And you and your wife are like, what? You're having dinner one night, and you're like, hey, let's start let's start a company. Like, how'd that happen? Where'd that idea come from? Where'd that idea come from? And talk to us about how did you capital? I mean, did it take a lot of money to get it going? Or just give us a little detail there, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. So I don't think there was one eureka moment, but I do know my wife was effectively freelancing as an interpreter herself.
Okay, okay, got it.
And that was the initial, idea was, okay, there's a demand for this. Here's a great flexible, job for her to do right now. But then as we thought about it, we're thinking, wow, first of all, Greater Boston is much more diverse linguistically than we ever thought.
Okay.
That's probably another conversation for another time, but we're like, wow, there's a lot more demand here. And there's not really a lot of people servicing that demand outside of like a really large player called Lionbridge.
Okay.
And so we saw an agency model as being really effective and like a low capital investment way to kind of get in the game, because you don't need to have a huge infrastructure to operate a business like that.
Okay.
So we started out just getting direct clients for her, kind of ironing out what the contracts need to look like and just all the things that you need to do early on that you don't think of in a business, right?
And what was she tactically doing? She was interpreting, like, what was she doing exactly? Go ahead.
What was the service that was actually rendered?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the service was pretty straightforward. It was, you'd have an appointment, you'd have a time and a place to be, and you're usually hired by whoever's facilitating the meeting. So let's just take the legal case, right?
Okay.
So there's a deposition happening. An attorney in his office or her office would say, we need an interpreter for this.
Gotcha.
They would hire us, bring us in. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so you guys got this little business going now together called Citygate. All right, cool. You're helping her with some of the admin stuff and the back end stuff, but you're not client facing at this time, or are you running the marketing on it?
I'm running the marketing and the growth side of it, and I kept my job at the time to basically fund that business, right?
There you go. Bingo.
It didn't take a huge capital infusion because, like I said, it's services. There wasn't a huge infrastructure to maintain, but I was able to basically put to use what I've been learning over the previous 3 or 4 years and actually use our real money to do it, which made it real. And that's where you really start to learn things, is when you put it into practice for yourself. So
love it.
Love it. Yeah, go ahead.
So for the listeners right there, I just want to kind of just, so your wife's skill set that she knew how to do, right, and she had contacts, combined with your marketing expertise that you had, boom, you guys are off and running, and you could do it on the side while you kept your other job, which helped fund it all. Beautiful. Love it. Okay,
That's
great.
it.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
And just as a side note on that, it's advice that I give to a lot of folks, even that I hire, as I say, like, learn on our dime and let this job be your lead investor. Like, if you have something, like, you really have to frame it like that.
Yep.
You might not be full-time with whatever your thing is, but allow your job to be framed as your lead investor. And it's really important.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So you guys did that for 3 years and then sold it?
Yeah. We actually, so the impetus there was we were starting our family, and we realized that this type of, although it was like a low capital type of business, it definitely required a lot of availability and, just ability to respond in a moment's notice. Like, we had an interpreter get in an accident one time, and then that left a client without an interpreter. So we had to kind of pivot around that. So we're like, okay, this isn't going to be the best lifestyle fit for us moving forward, having a baby, especially where my wife was owning most of the operations of the business at the time.
Okay.
And it just lined up where we had a buyer who approached us, wanted to expand their operation.
Out of the blue?
Out of the blue. Yeah. It was a cold email that we received one day. And at first it was an extension to maybe partner because they wanted to have a presence in the Northeast, and it turned into an actual, sale and acquisition. So that kind of worked out. Yeah.
Wow. But not enough to retire and buy a home somewhere. I mean, it was enough a little nest egg for you guys.
Yeah, it was It was a good little exit for us. It was a good, not life-changing money, but definitely, I think the biggest thing it did for us was it showed us, I mean, at that time too, we did acquire clients like the NCAA, certain universities, like there was some larger players. So there's some value there for sure. But for us, it showed us that you can conceive of an idea, you can build it to a place and then hand it off. And we saw that whole thing unfold.
Boom. Yeah. Great.
That was where the light bulb really went on.
Yeah. Awesome experience. Okay. So once you did that, now you still had a job working for, I think, Upward Search Marketing at that time, even when you sold this business. But now you really got the bug because you built something and sold it and you're like, okay, we can do this. We can do that again.
So this is where my story gets a little bit weirder or maybe different from others. So yeah, I was still working for that company, but we actually struck a deal where I was kind of starting to head up an incubator at that company. And so I had equity in a business that we were starting together in a majority share. And that business ended up actually shuttering. We had to shut it down after a couple of years. We just got outgunned. It's a good learning lesson for us actually, where we had to either raise a lot of money or kind of shut things down. We started out with like maybe 3 competitors, and by the end of it had about 24.
I don't see this business on your profile anywhere. So I didn't see that. Is that
this is basically a software tool, it's a software as a service tool for content marketers. Okay. And it's probably at scale. The best thing I can compare it to is a Percolate, which just got bought by a company called Seismic for like an ungodly amount of money.
All right. So you tried launching that, you and some other people.
Yeah. So I had some of the resources for the company that I was working with at the time, but had this kind of interesting deal where it was like part employee, part partner.
Okay.
And then we grew it. We developed the product pretty far, but we're at a crossroads. Decided we needed to shut things down, and that was fine. Those guys were actually in the process of selling their company too. And that's what kind of got me to transition to EmberTribe. And
well, more great experience for you then. So now at this point, before you started EmberTribe, you had experience being an employee for a company at an agency, plus you and your wife built the company and sold it. Plus you did this other joint venture. Lots of good experience now rolling into EmberTribe. Okay. How did you decide to exit that regular job and start EmberTribe? What was the pivot point or the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak? Talk to us.
Yeah. So I think honestly, the first thing that really drove that decision was just my family situation. So at this point, my son was born. I have 2 kids. Mm-hmm. So having 2 young kids, having a young family, wanting to have more time with them, more flexibility, more autonomy was definitely a big driver, right? So knowing that whatever we built needed to be flexible was really important.
Okay.
And also, like I have my in-laws are all from outside the country, from Central America. So being able to go for longer periods of time abroad and not feel like that was interrupting some huge thing back here in the States work-wise was part of the deal too.
So building something you could work remotely and have, everybody be virtual. That was huge.
Yep. The flexibility piece was huge. Wanting to be able to have more flexibility of time to be with family was huge. And then frankly, just having seen how larger agencies, not Upward, but more the partner agencies, like I worked with, well, I don't want to mention any names, but I worked with some larger, really well-known agencies as like their SEO kind of consultant. And I just got really, really tired of creating like 80-page, decks, presenting to executive teams who really just had paid a lot of money for you to be there to prove their point. And then none of your work seeing the light of day. Like I was tired of that kind of feeling of waste. And having already run a business and sold it with my wife, I was interested in getting real results for entrepreneurs that had something interesting they wanted to do, rather than people who were interested in preserving their jobs and proving their points.
Okay. Now, when you started talking to friends and family about starting your own marketing agency or advertising agency, everybody, I'm guessing people are like, yeah, there's a million agencies. Like there's a crap ton of competition, right? Surely.
Well, yeah, but you got to think at this time too, things like paid social were really still in their infancy.
Okay.
Right. So things like Facebook ads, for instance, were still very, very new, and they weren't really adopted at all in the B2B space.
Okay.
kind of gave us our start. So yeah, and I didn't start this out of nothing either. I did have freelance clients that I was working for.
You took my next question. So you had freelance, and then as soon as you started EmberTribe, boom, they were clients.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting though is my partner and I, we made the decision to go in this thing together. And my partner had more experience on the kind of business development side, and I had more experience in the delivery and actual execution. And I had this kind of suite of freelance clients that I used as a bridge to kind of jump over.
Gotcha.
But my biggest client that I was depending on ended up leaving after 30 days of me taking the leap.
Let me just take a pause there. So you and your co-founder are like, hey, listen, cash flow wise, we got the big client right here. This big client's going to help us kind of, bridge this gap until we get some more clients, and then boom, they're gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was one of those moments where it's like fight or flight. And, it was not because of us, not because of them. They just had funding that didn't come through, and
Yep.
you know how these things go, but it still was like, 2/3 of the income that we're relying on. So it was okay. Like, we had runway, we had savings, we had, these other couple of clients, but we needed to make some moves very quickly to make this sustainable.
Was your wife working at the time?
No. Nope.
Was your partner's wife working at the time?
Nope.
Oh, well, when you say runway, were there points where you're sitting down at the kitchen table with your wife and you're saying, okay, 11 months, we got 11 months until we run out of cash. Was it like that a little bit, or not quite that scary?
No, it wasn't quite that scary, but you know what? I got to tell you though, it was much less of a focus on how much time we have left, and much more focus on like pipeline and opportunities and what we had before.
Great.
So great. I think the minute you get on your back foot and you start playing defense is the minute that you die. And so we really just leaned in, and
great advice. Just keep pushing forward.
That's it.
So you just started hustling. You just hustling and grabbing more clients. All right. Now, was it he was getting the gigs and you were filling the gigs basically because you were the marketing guy and he was the sales guy?
It was a little bit of both. Honestly, we both had established some pretty good networks, and that's honestly one of the great benefits of, I think, being in the agency world is that you're not like, I've been in-house, I've been in agency world, but like the benefit of agency world is that you meet a lot of clients and you kind of start adopting their networks as well and establishing relationships there. It's kind of like this cross-pollination that happens. So that was a huge advantage. We really grew the business in that first year to year and a half, just out of our own networks and through referrals.
Great.
And we can get to it later, but when we really started to grow was when we developed our own kind of sales and marketing machine.
Okay. So at first though, it's a service business. So you didn't have to have a lot of capital really to get started. The main thing was working your own network to get some early clients, maybe move some of those freelance clients over, and boom, you're off and running, and you got a little bit of cash flow going. So not a lot of investment. And by the way, I'm totally bootstrapped for you guys. Yeah. No outside cash at this point. Nothing like that.
Nope. Totally self-funded.
Okay.
But to go back though, because I think this was definitely like it felt like a leap at the time, is I had experience in paid traffic and performance marketing.
Okay.
But most of my experience at that time was still in organic and SEO and content marketing. But I saw it being increasingly difficult to build a business around SEO and content marketing for a variety of reasons. And so making that decision to double down more on like the paid traffic side was a difficult decision, because it's not where, like, we could have built quicker and more efficiently on SEO in the beginning, but I felt like there would have been more of a ceiling there. So like choosing that particular vein, I think, was really important.
When did you do that? Did you do that right away after 6 months? Right away. Okay.
Yeah, right away. And I mean, we definitely said yes to a lot of different kind of service offerings just to kind of get our as my partner puts it, meat hooks in. I don't know why he uses that one, but it's a good one. But as we refined our focus, we definitely continued just that through line of doing paid and performance marketing.
Did that help you, narrowing your services? Do you think do you advise that for people just in general? Just, hey, narrow in, have a good focus on what you do really well. Don't try to do too much. Is that, Is that what you encourage others to do?
I do. Yeah, I do. But I like to balance it with a realistic approach. Like, I think, in any business, it doesn't matter what you're in, like you have to differentiate. You have to have kind of your point of differentiation. And it gets increasingly difficult to do that the broader the scope of your services.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, early on, when you're trying to get your first 5 or 10 clients, sometimes you're in a position where you do need to say yes to things that are kind of outside that center of genius, because it's just a part of closing the deal. And I think that's okay. I think it's just important, though, that you don't get spread too thin too early. Like, make those compromises maybe for your first 5 or 10 clients or whatever that equates to for revenue, and then continue to really narrow your focus and get really good kind of at that one thing.
I think that's great advice. I just want to let that breathe for a second, because you're right. If you're bootstrapping it and you don't have an outside investor, you are going to have to just say yes sometimes to the broader, piece, depending on if somebody calls and says, I want to pay you to do X, Y, Z. If you're an early startup company, you're going to be like, yeah, okay, yes. even if you wanted to go narrow, right? But that's great advice. Yeah. By the way, when I was researching you before the podcast, I love the fact that you are super clear and direct on your website with what you do. You don't have to dig around. You don't go to EmberTribe and go, okay, now what do these guys do? We drive growth through paid traffic, period. That's what we do. Big, giant, bold letters. I love it. It speaks to
awesome
what you were saying. So, okay, so you guys are off and running. No employees at this point, just you two.
Yeah, so let's call it actually November 1st, 2015 was our kind of official, full-time with EmberTribe start date. By the end of January, or like mid-January of 2016, we actually hired our first employee.
Okay.
And so what happened in between there was we signed a client in December of 2015 with like a longer-term contract. Mm-hmm. And that gave us like incredible breathing room. Mm-hmm. And so we decided early on, like, let's try to get somebody in here as soon as possible so we don't get choked out too early in terms of scale and capacity. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot we did right. There's a lot we did wrong. There's a lot I would have done differently, I guess you could say. But yeah, we made that first hire pretty quickly. And I'm glad that we did. It's just, it brought some pain with it.
What were a couple of huge mistakes or things you would do differently today? Is there any one particular thing you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah. So I think, what it all boils down to is not firing fast enough.
Okay.
And holding out hope for too long that this would work out when everybody just kind of intuitively knew that it wouldn't. and trying to push something through for too long that just wasn't really a fit. So I think I could probably sum it up to be that. I think what we did really well was documenting our processes early.
Okay.
So I literally, in the early days when I was doing everything, I had to be involved in sales. I had to be involved in delivery and client management and everything. I would just record my screen as I was doing my everyday work, even before we hired. And I would just record and narrate everything I was doing. And I think my wife probably looked at me weird every once in a while when she'd look over, and I'm just like, and now I'm saving the file. And now but what I was doing was just recording dozens and dozens of short video trainings that went right onto Drive. So when we hired that first person, it was like, okay, here's your work for the week. Go into this folder, watch, grab some popcorn, watch this, then do it. It's like, that was one of the best things we ever could have done, because it was like, it saved us so much time getting somebody up to speed.
Really good tip. Yep. Great. And these days, recording stuff is super easy. Dropping it in Google Drive or whatever it is you use, super easy. Yeah. Yeah, we do the same, and that's a huge tip for the listeners. We record stuff on Zoom or whatever and drop it in folders all the time for each other. Yep, great advice. Yep. Okay, so moving along now, talk to us. Give us the EmberTribe overview as it stands today. How many employees? How many clients are you servicing? Kind of give us an overview as it stands now.
Yeah, for sure. So EmberTribe, we talked about, it's a performance marketing agency. We're focused on paid traffic. our sweet spot is really working with early stage and growth stage startups. So to that end, we're pretty active partners with organizations like Techstars. We worked with companies out of Y Combinator. Some of these incubator programs are like right up our alley. And so the reason why we're usually a really good fit for those types of companies is that they don't have the timelines to wait to start validating how they can acquire customers. Like they can't wait 9 to 12 months for SEO to kick in. They can't wait for these future co-branded partnerships to kick in. Like they need to quickly validate where they can get customers repeatedly and consistently at a acceptable cost. And so using paid traffic from sources like Google, Facebook, and a bunch of other channels is a really quick feedback loop for them. And that's where we bring a lot of value to those companies, is just finding what we call like a channel fit as soon as possible, and understanding how to bring that to a level of scale to grow.
So is your target, a company that's under 50 million, under 10 million?
Yeah. So for that startup profile, we're typically working with companies that have raised like a large seed round or maybe close to raising their A round. And they have a product market fit. So we're not figuring that out for them. Like we're not doing, user interviews and things like that necessarily, but we are trying to really nail the channels and the mix and the messaging that's going to repeatedly capture those customers for them.
What about that small company that hasn't been funded by the seed round, and they, what do those guys do? They can't afford to use this paid traffic yet. Go ahead.
So we do. We have some clients that kind of fit that bill too. And I should be clear too. We also work with larger companies. Like we have, some companies that are probably in the hundreds of employees as well. But the real common thread through all of them is that they're entrepreneurially minded and they're willing to move quickly and not bog us down with like a lot of bureaucratic decision making and never shipping anything. So that's kind of the through line through all of them. But yeah, we definitely have folks who are self-funded, who are starting out, but that's, I'd say, more of the outlier. Our sweet spot would be folks that are at least funded. But we've started to create opportunities for people to, if they don't have the budget to work with us yet, to kind of learn and put some sweat equity into their own business. So we created a whole kind of training platform and coaching program for that, which we're still early stages.
Great way to build a relationship so that when they are funded, they're paying you.
That's it. Yep. That's it.
Okay. So if I own a recruiting firm like Riderflex, which I do, and we're ready to start spending money on paid ads, whether it's pay-per-click on Google or Facebook ads or promotions on campaigns, I think they call them on LinkedIn.
Yep.
But I don't know how to do it, or I don't have time to do it, but I know I want to spend $1,000 a month on it. I can call EmberTribe and you guys take care of it.
Yeah, from soup to nuts, that's really our sweet spot, right? And I think the way that, to paint a picture for you, the way that would flesh out is we would come to you as a business owner and try to figure out, where do you want to go? Because that's really the important question to ask first. Is everybody assumes that they want to grow, but by how much and why? And are you prepared for that growth? It's like it's growth changes things. It changes how your organization needs to run. It changes your focus on what you deliver. And so we find that some of the best value that we bring in the early days working with the founder or their team is helping them understand like what that path of growth looks like and how that will, change their organization. And so once we figure out what those objectives are, what the actual numbers are that you want to grow to, we can start backing out from that end in mind and saying, okay, well, here's kind of the first whack at the path to get there, right? Like here's some benchmarks for leads. Here's some benchmarks for your close rates. And here's some other benchmarks that are relevant, right? And so based on these assumptions, let's move forward with these 3 different channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, and whatever. And let's start there, but be flexible and iterative and experimental in our process to make sure that we're still moving towards that end goal, but we're not so tied down to one strategy that it chokes us out, right? We're not so dedicated to this one path. I think that's probably where we're different, is that we're able to move in these agile sprints and kind of like your outsourced, mad scientist experimenters are able to chart a path. Yeah.
I like the fact that you're a strategic partner. It sounds like you'll sit at the table and say, "Hey, let's talk about your business overall. Let me help you out with strategy." I like that. There's a million agencies out, not a million. I don't. How many marketing agencies are there? I don't know. You probably know, right? How many agencies are there? I don't even know.
I've heard round figures of 300,000.
Wow.
In North America alone, but that's a very broad brushstroke between creative agencies to performance marketing agencies and everything in between. Yeah.
And what in one sentence, what makes you different and better than anybody else doing this paid stuff?
So I'd say, we are relentless about testing. And so I don't think you're going to find another agency who is as thoughtful and as dogged about challenging our best numbers. I think the norm in the agency world is to find something that works, let it run, just set it and forget it, because that's going to help your margins. The less time that you spend on that account, the more your margins will raise for your business. And so that's the natural default. Ours is, okay, here's what we got last quarter. What are we doing this quarter to beat that?
Okay.
Because the only certainty is that the longer you stay stagnant and passive and set it and forget it, the easier it's going to be to disrupt your entire customer acquisition machine once somebody comes and challenges you, either with a bigger budget, better creative, or whatever else might be, right?
Okay, very good. How many employees now?
So we're up to about 20 at this point. We just celebrated 4 years. And so, now we're kind of in growth mode over the next year. So that number will be changing, I think, pretty rapidly.
And I know that you're a co-founder, but I noticed there's no title, right? And you haven't mentioned a title for your other co-founder either. Talk to me. That must be something that has to do with your culture there or something, maybe. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, I wish I had a more thoughtful answer for you. It's just we never did. Like, we have other people in our company who have titles. Everybody pretty much does. For myself and my business partner, we just co-founder just kind of did it. Like, he and I both have our own areas of responsibility that are pretty well divvied up and delegated.
Okay.
But it's just a conversation we've never had and we've never needed to have. So
wow. No other owners, just you two?
Just us two, yeah.
And you still haven't taken on any cash?
No.
What's the plan now? Grow it, sell it, take on cash. Take over the world. What are you going to do next?
Well, we're having a lot of fun, man. So I think, as we grow and develop, we're looking at ways that we can, further solidify like our differentiator in the market, which for us, that usually looks like technology that we're building. So we have invested pretty heavily in kind of building platforms and things to help with our workflow to make us more efficient.
Okay.
And whenever one of those really kind of catches fire, the plan is to potentially take one of those to market. So that's a pretty common path for services businesses that want to get into products. Right. So we have a couple of candidates for that, but we're also really just starting to get more and more focus within this area of performance marketing. So that means, like, for instance, now 60% of our companies are e-commerce brands, right? So we've done a lot of work there. We've started to actually invest in some of our clients and become partners with them. So there's some interesting kind of creative ways that, we're redefining what that agency client or vendor client relationship looks like. Okay. And I think we're starting to blur those lines and really present ourselves more as a partner who can not only help you grow, but also even help you sell your business. Like, we're working with an M&A firm, we're working with some other people as partners. And so I think that's the next generation of what we're doing is how can we further integrate what we do as an offering so that's undeniably unique and, 10x what anything else is out there.
I love that. Okay. So if you were giving advice to somebody that, like yourself, worked in an agency, it doesn't have to be marketing or advertising, but let's say, they're working for a company like you were, they want to start their own business. They're scared. They're worried. How am I going to pay the bills? My wife doesn't work. We just had a kid, whatever.
Yeah.
What would you tell those listeners?
Well, I think I would tell them that at some point there's going to be a leap that you have to take, but you can really mitigate a lot of the downside risks. Like there's this old kind of, rugged, risky kind of painted picture of what an entrepreneur has to be. And I think that's kind of a false view of how it has to be. I think, there's a smart way to go about, testing out whatever your business is. Like, and will people actually buy it that isn't your mom or dad or friend or brother? Like there's ways for you to validate very quickly. And there's people who've spoken about this way more eloquently than I could ever. Lean startup would be a great place to go.
Yeah.
But I would just say freelancing is a path to validating what you're doing if you want to build a services business.
Agreed.
Offshoring your developments and building tools that can kind of be an early prototype and see if people will buy it. There's ways to kind of dip your toe in the water without quitting everything and hoping for the best. And it's probably the better way to go about it.
What would you say to those guys? I remember when I first started Riderflex, and you hear this, from some advisors and mentors, they'll say, well, you're not all in. You're not all in. You got to be all in. You got to, you get that push from some people. So yeah. I hear you saying, it doesn't have to be that way. You can keep some revenue coming into your household by doing this thing over here on the side and start your business.
Well, I think a lot of it hinges on, what you're trying to build. If you're building something that's going to be heavy on the tech side, there's going to be a huge capital investment. You're going to be raising money, and your investors are going to want to see that you're bought in. You have a responsibility to them to be in there full time. But that's not the only path forward to building a business. And when you're building something that's self-funded and, services business, in our case, you don't have to make that leap all at once. And you probably shouldn't. You probably should kind of ease your way in. Because what I've found is that, sure, the pressure cooker of taking that leap causes you to really have to focus and to work hard. But at the same time, when you're in survival mode, it robs you of a lot of creativity and perspective that you could otherwise have.
Great advice.
And so there's something to be said about that as well. And I don't want to deny the fact that there is a point where you need to commit, but it's probably not as early as you think it is what my advice would be.
That's great stuff, Josh. Really great stuff right there. Okay, very good. On the employee side, just real quick, a couple of questions, and primarily because Riderflex gives a lot of hiring and job interview advice on our podcast. So when you are interviewing somebody now for EmberTribe, tell me, what are you looking for, and how are you making the decisions? What character traits, what kind of personalities are you looking for? Talk to us about it.
Yeah. So I don't directly do as much of the hiring anymore, but I definitely still contribute to that process. So I'll speak to it from that angle. Okay. But I think for us, it's, because we're a distributed team, and that was a real value that we had in building this company, was giving people, our saying has basically been, we want to work remotely so that we're able to hire the best people who do their best work while living their best life. And so for us, that means we're looking for people who are curious, they're just naturally curious people that, they want to seek out answers for themselves, and they're self-motivated to do that. So a signpost of that is usually having some diverse set of hobbies or projects or things that are on the back burner. It's usually a good indicator that somebody's curious. They're trying things out. They're testing the waters in different areas of life.
Okay.
For us, I think, because client management, people are fickle. So it's sometimes our work is not just we thought, okay, let me slow down for a second. We thought when we started this business, because we're so results focused.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
It would just only ever be about the results. And then we realized pretty quickly that that's not the case, that people still need to be tended to, relationships need to be nurtured. And so for us, empathy is really huge. Your ability to especially understand a founder or the founder's team, the pressure that they're in, the other things that they're trying to accomplish besides marketing. It requires a great deal of empathy to kind of understand that person's point of view. So one thing that we like to ask, in the hiring process is about a difficult or challenging project that they worked on where something didn't go well. We want to hear about the battle scars and the times where things weren't a home run. Right. And we steal this. There's a friend of mine, Jordan Husney. He's the co-founder of a company called Parable. Okay. And so I want to give credit where credit's due, but he takes this to another level and actually tries to have that person. So let's say that their difficult time was dealing with a client who wasn't happy with the results. He asked that person to basically step into the mind of that person and tell what they were thinking at that point, or what
that's good.
drove them to act the way that they were acting, effectively an exercise in empathy. So we've tried to adapt that into our own workflow as well.
That's great. You're right. When you're in the service business, it's not just about the result or the work that you're producing. Half of it is managing people and personalities and characters and all of that. I mean, my partner Scott and I talk about that at Riderflex all the time. You would think it'd be as easy as a company calls us, they say, find us a VP of sales. We find them a great candidate, they hire them, boom, we're done. I wish it went like that every time. But you're dealing with emotions and people and styles and you name it. Yeah, so you got to have the empathy piece and the people skills, the communication skills. So I'm sure that's critical when you're talking to employees or interviewing potential candidates for sure. So you've been successful early, Josh. You're still a young man, right? I mean, you're not even 30. You're not even 30, are you?
I am. I am in my 30s, 34 to be exact. So giving that information out.
Okay. By the way, congratulations on everything that you've built so far. You had the guts to, like you said, I think your wife wasn't working. You had a kid. You stepped out of a regular paying job to start a business. I mean, that takes guts, my man. So congratulations on, doing that and now building a successful company with, 20 something employees. With that said, when you look back just a few years ago from 34 to, let's call it 21, if you could talk to that 21-year-old Josh, what would you tell him right now?
Yeah, that's a good one. You know what? I think I would tell him to sell. I would tell him to start selling something, anything now. Like just the ability to go out and get somebody who doesn't care about you or isn't trying to stroke your ego or make you feel good about yourself and confront them with the decision to buy or to not buy. And I just think that's so important to be able to, because I think at 21 especially, I'm an ideas guy to my core. Like I could sit around all day and just get dopamine hits over and over again about dreaming over the future and thinking about ideas. And I think some of that's a strength. It's really good, but it could be, if you want to actually achieve anything or do anything, like you can't stay there. And so I think the antidote that I would have prescribed to my 21-year-old self would be, okay, pick one of those and go sell it to somebody and collect money for it as soon as humanly possible. And if it's a no, understand why, and then iterate on the next pitch. Like, I think that skill set alone is just invaluable.
Great advice. Great advice. I had somebody tell me once, you might have a business if a complete stranger is paying you cash for something.
It's the only time it matters, honestly. Yeah.
Right. It's so true. So right now in your life, and I think this changes depending on where you're at in life, but what is Josh's core purpose in life when he wakes up every day, if he had to put it in a sentence? And I want to challenge you just a little bit to say, you can't use the son and the daughter and the wife as your core purpose, because I already know that is the core purpose.
Yeah.
So if I pushed you away and said you can't use that as your answer, what would Josh's core purpose be?
That's good. So I think for me at this stage in the company, functionally, it's to scale, right? We're in scale mode. So figuring out how to do what we're doing now at a level that's 10 times higher than it is. But if I had to choose one sentence, I'd say my core purpose in waking up work-wise is to make sure that I am as efficiently allocated as possible to my sweet spots. And so
that's good. That's good.
I want to make sure that, because the two are linked, right? In order for this thing to scale, myself and my partner both need to be operating like 100% in our strengths, in our sweet spot, and everything else needs to be replicated and like redundant. So if I'm not able to operate in that way, it means that there's a gap in kind of our delivery or our process or our system that needs to be tended to. And it's a signpost that we're not there yet. So like, I think that's what I would answer you right now. Right. Purpose isn't a value necessarily, but that'd be my marching orders for myself as a roll out of bed.
I think that's a great answer. I really do. Yeah. Beautiful. Josh, congratulations on everything you guys have done so far. Your energy, by the way, is contagious, right?
Thanks, man.
I'm sure when your employees are around you, they're just revved up. Now, how many people work remote versus coming to an office? Just real quick.
Yeah, so our whole team is remote. I have a space here where there's one other team member, and we have an intern as well right now, but that's mainly just out of happenstance. Everybody else is spread out across 9 different states in 3 different countries. So
Riderflex is the same, just so you know. Yeah, we do not have an office. Everybody that's involved, the 12 people currently involved, yeah, they all live in different states. I believe the same thing. In fact, I personally believe, Josh, at some point we're going to look back on society and go, why were we making people drive an hour in a car to a building to open a laptop in a cubicle? Like, why were we doing that?
It's so funny, man, because I've worked, in an office for the better part of my career still. And it's like, there's day after day where you'd walk in and everybody's headphones were on. They'd be slacking each other. It's like, why are we all here?
I don't know.
Slacking each other and not talking to each other. It just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's funny. We will look back at this as like a relic,
I totally agree. We run our business the same, so I love it. Josh, thank you so much, sir. Great advice, really good stuff, inspirational stuff for the listeners. Congratulations on everything you guys are doing. I wish you the best of luck as things move along. Okay. Now, for the listeners, real quick, EmberTribe.com, right? EmberTribe.com. If you are looking for help, and you want to get some paid marketing going on, right? Like, and you don't know what you're doing, you want some advice on a LinkedIn campaign, Facebook ads, all that stuff. EmberTribe can help you.
That's it.
That sound right? All right, sir.
I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Josh. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye. The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.